since thoroughly enjoyed coming to know her as a friend. That was not the only surprise visit I received during the month of June this last year, and that the other one was a couple of weeks before that. I had gotten an email from a young man named Nick Hebert, and he just simply said, I'd like to visit you. I feel like, I'm not going to tell his whole story, he'll get his opportunity to share that, but he just said, I would like to visit you and see if, what I'm sensing God saying to me is in fact the direction that I feel like I'm supposed to go with my life. And I'm just going to go ahead and admit to you that when I get those kinds of emails, I think you got our address off of our church website, and I tend to think, okay, something's coming around the corner. And but I wrote him back and said, sure, let's visit. And I was prepared for somebody to come in and either be asking if he could, borrow $1,000 or was selling Christian fertilizer or something, that was kind of an angle. And that's probably a fault on my part. But what Scott and I found, we met with him that afternoon, was this guy that was just really gave the appearance of being a great guy that was really interested in making a turn in his life. And since June, Nick has been a big part of our church. He's up here playing now on guitar, and he's working with our teams and making a big difference there. And he's a big part of our college group too. So it's really been a thrill to have Nick around. I asked him last Sunday if he would share, and he was a little hesitant, but I'm going to let Nick tell his full response after I asked him. But this time I'm going to ask Nick to come and share a bit, and then he's going to light our Advent candle.
It's not too late to ask for that $1,000, is it?
No. You can do it. You can ask at any time.
So yeah, this might be a little longer than you guys might expect, but you'll find out why. Last Sunday, actually Thursday before last Sunday, I was doing my devotion and couldn't sleep for a couple hours afterwards. And because I felt inside, whether it was myself asking or the Holy Spirit, I don't know, but the question was going on repeat in my mind, do you want to share your testimony? And, for me, I was obviously going to encounter that with questions of, when would I get the time to do that in front of the congregation? And where would I do it? And so I didn't tell anyone about it and just kind of sat on it and kind of just sat in my mind for a few days. And sure enough, last Sunday after the service, Pastor Lonnie pulled me aside and asked me to light the Advent candle and share a few words. So now I got to that. But, my jaw kind of dropped. You said I was a little hesitant. That's because I was in shock, because I hadn't told anyone. So it's amazing, actually. But I also want to thank, I've been around many of you, and some of you have taken me out to dinner. Some of you have had me in your house. And if you haven't, it's never too late.
That's easier than $1,000.
It's easier than $1,000, yeah. But I wanted to thank you for the outpouring of love that I've experienced. After last night especially, it's never been so sure that this place is another home, away from home. But for those of you who may not know me exactly, I guess I'll start with my little story. I grew up in Nacogdoches, Texas, which is about 2 hours northeast of here. And I am one of 5 children. And I grew up my entire life in the Nacogdoches First Church in Nazareth. My family was giant in that church. We were involved in every facet possible. My mother sang on Sundays, was in choir, was involved in hospitality. My father was a board member, Sunday school teacher. My grandparents right now run the Prime Timers Senior Citizens organization. So it's a giant part of life. And so there was never a moment where I was away from it. And, I grew up a normal kid in church life and being involved in everything. But there were trials, which I'm going to get into, two specific ones. The first being when I was in 3rd grade. Two of my younger siblings, who were fraternal twins, boy and girl, had a sickness. And one morning before school, my sister, who was 2 at the time, had a seizure in her high chair. And I didn't know what was going on, but it was a big deal. The family was kind of freaking out. So that day they took her to Tyler, and we're doing tests, CT scans, all of that. And it wasn't within, I think, a week or two that they diagnosed her with cancer. And you can imagine the shock in the family about that. But after that, they decided to take her to Houston and to a bigger hospital, more capable. And they were doing blood work and discovered that they'd misdiagnosed her, which I guess was a relief for everyone. But it was not worse, but there was a different type of disorder. They discovered she had chronic granulomatous disease, which is a white blood cell disorder, to where your white blood cells cannot fight off infection. And it's extremely rare. There are 20 cases reported every year. And what do you know, her twin brother had it also. So that's what we were dealt. And at the time, my father was on a teacher's salary, and my mother was working as the accountant for the family business, a bed and breakfast. And so she had to stop work. And that began 3 years of continuous leave for her being in hospitals. They had made the decision to go to Medical City in Dallas, and that's where the next 3 years of our lives we had many trips to. The procedure for curing this CGD was a bone marrow transplant. And so when they did all the blood work, they discovered that everyone in the family matched except me. So I was not really a part of it, but my sister had bone marrow from my other sister, and my brother had bone marrow from my other brother. So for the next 3 years, that's what went down. And they went through chemotherapy. They lost their hair. My dad decided to shave his head. Still is bald to this day. And that was really that's what caused that. But you should know now that they're cured.
Amen.
And
Amen.
aside from the stresses on our family financially, which I wasn't really aware of at the time, we made it. And I was in about 6th grade, I believe, when all that kind of wrapped up. They were still making their, annual trips up there. But we lived a pretty normal life. It was actually a relief to have Mom back. She would be gone for months at a time, in hospitals and all sorts of stuff. So we finally had her back, and our family was kind of adjusting to being normal. So we'll fast forward to the summer after my freshman year in high school. I was 15, and we had a mission trip to Nashville, Tennessee. And we had basically finished up all of our work for the week, and it was supposed to be our relaxation day on Friday. And so I called my house in the morning like I normally did. And my grandmother picked up the phone, and I wasn't expecting that. And so when I called, she had a weird tone in her voice and said that my mom wasn't doing so well, so I was confused. And so throughout that day, I learned that my mother, the night before, had some complications from surgery she had had a few years prior, and that she was in the hospital in surgery. So throughout that entire day, that was on my mind. And that night around 7 p.m. I received a phone call that she was crashing, her vitals were crashing. And I'll never forget the moment I heard that. I pretty much didn't do anything for 5 minutes because I was in shock. But she ended up fighting through that, and that night wasn't her last. But it was the last night that we would have heard anything from her. Over the next week, she was in Houston at Herman Memorial, and we were going through a roller coaster of emotion. We were given good reports, then bad reports, but in the end, her brain scan showed no activity, and we decided to take her off life support. So at 15, I lost my mother, and my father was left with raising 5 kids, essentially on his own. And for the next few years, you can imagine, I dealt with all of that. And I mean, everyone has their own unique ways of dealing with that kind of thing, but for me, I dealt with it inside with anger at God, and just really, I couldn't understand why that happened. And that carried throughout high school, and that carried into college until about last year. And it wasn't until May of this year, and bear in mind I'd still been involved with the church the entire time. But when I got to college, I didn't really... My aunt, Debbie, who was friends with Sharon, actually pointed this church out and said you should give it a try. But at the time, I wasn't really prepared to make any sort of commitment, because I was still living a rebellious, selfish life. So for me, I never went to church when I wasn't visiting home through college, through the first 2 years. And this May, I made the decision to give up my selfish rebellion and recommit my life to Christ. So
Amen.
that happened. And in June, like Pastor Lonnie said, I was in prayer one day, and for, I kid you not, maybe a week and a half, words were echoing through my mind, Bryan Church of Nazareth, Bryan Church of Nazareth. And, I thought it was crazy, I'd never felt that before, so, but luckily my father's parents were in town, and they always have a way of persuading me to do things, so, they encouraged me to contact Pastor Lonnie and take the step, and so I did, and I came down 2 hours for an hour-and-a-half meeting with 2 guys I immediately hit it off with, and formed a connection. And I'm not going to speak for them, but it absolutely was something that I could feel was right at the moment. And so that formed that. And this summer was also the summer my dad decided to get remarried, and I couldn't find a job. So this summer was really difficult on me, but at the same time, I made the transition. And without a doubt in my mind, this place is something special, and I've come to find the relationships I've made here are extremely important to me, and I love each and every one of you, and I want to thank you for having me. And I'm going to do the Christmas tie-in. There's not a single Christmas now that I haven't gone by without obviously thinking about my mother. But on the same hand, I've become extremely aware in situations when other people are experiencing loss. And this year actually has been the biggest year of stories I've heard of people losing family around Christmas, Thanksgiving. And my challenge to you is to just be aware to those around you because someone in your life, whether you know or not, might be experiencing loss and experiencing their first Christmas without someone they love. So, it's a time of hope, but it's also a time of cherishing your family, as everyone knows. But it means something more have gone through loss, and I know that the Green family can sympathize with that. That's my story, so thank you. Oh man.